The Carolina Hurricanes have a lot of things to take care of this offseason, ranging from goalies, extending their captain, extending Brett Pesce, and could they be targeting Tyler Toffoli? We will be talking about all of that in this jam-packed episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by the lovely folks over at FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/locked on today to get started. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Andrew Schnittker. How are you doing on this Saturday afternoon, Andrew?
I'm doing well. The number of things that we have to talk about in this episode is like slowly but surely grown throughout the day as I've looked at more stuff, which is, we're in that part of the NHL offseason. We are in less than a week before the draft where teams make a lot of trades. We are also today a week away from the opening of NHL free agency. So a lot going on.
Yes, and we're going to dive right on into it. No fat in this episode. And
well, I'm here, so maybe, but
oh man. Diving into the Hurricanes goalie plans. We've talked about this a little bit already in previous episodes of speculating on what they can do, but it was reported a few days ago. I forget by who.
Pierre LeBrun. Most of what we're going to talk about here today is going to come from Pierre LeBrun. He's the guy right now.
Okay, thank you. Is that the Hurricanes are looking at re-signing, both Frederik Andersen and Antti Raanta, which is very interesting because we had previously figured it'd be Andersen and Kochetkov as the tandem next year. Kochetkov making that jump up full-time to the NHL rather than being the third man down in the AHL for when a guy inevitably gets hurt. So this is pretty interesting. It had been said a couple of weeks ago that both Andersen and Raanta were interested in re-signing here. So in that regard, it's not a surprise. But on the Hurricane side of things, that the fact that they want to roll with both of those guys again is pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's a few reasons I don't necessarily love this. Number one is that, the salary cap implications. Pyotr Kochetkov is on a one-way deal now, $2 million. You figure Andersen's probably going to cost you $4.5 million again. Raanta probably costs you 1 to 2. Do you want to spend $7-8 million on 3 goalies when you have other needs? And the other thing with that is, I don't really think a 3 goalie rotation like that is ideal. Now, in years past, they've had injuries. They've ended up needing 3 guys. So in that sense, that depth's been nice to have. But you view Pyotr Kochetkov as your goalie in the future. If you bring both Andersen and Raanta back, I think you're taking reps away from him. I think you're blocking him a little bit. I think he's already proven, and I know that the whole thing is like, well, he still doesn't need waivers, so he could go to the AHL. Well, number one, I think he's proven everything he could at the AHL level. Number two, there's no affiliate. Where's he going to go? Do you want your goalie of the future playing for somebody else's affiliate? I'm sure there's plenty of AHL teams out there that would love to have Pyotr Kochetkov, but I feel like it's his, it's time to see a little bit of what he can do as, part of that true top 2. If they do it this way, I guess it's not the end of the world because he's got a 4-year deal, so they've got more time. But I don't know. I feel like when you get these young guys that you feel like, they're ready, they can be part of the picture going forward, at some point you have to commit to that and, not block them with an older player and give them that chance to play and succeed. I mean, look at a guy like Jack Drury. It hasn't been that long. We talked about Jack Drury wanting a trade. Look at last offseason. It was thought, this was kind of going to be Jack Drury's time to be an NHL regular. And then he ends up wanting a trade because he was effectively blocked by Paul Stastny and Derek Stepan coming in. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Kochetkov if the Hurricanes sign Andersen and Raanta, but at some point you have to be willing to fully commit to these guys as a part of the NHL picture. And I just feel like I would rather see, I mean, I've talked about this several times, but my ideal tandem for next year is Andersen and Kochetkov. I would rather see Kochetkov as a true part of the top two rather than bringing back both goalies from last year and having a 3-man rotation.
Yeah, I agree there because, at the end of the day, if you're running a 3 goalie rotation, there's gonna be that odd man out. We saw that in that realigned season where the Hurricanes rolled with Mrazek, Reimer, and Nedeljkovic, and there was always that odd man out, which ended up being Peter Mrazek a lot, especially come playoff time. And I just don't see that working. I really don't, because someone is inevitably going to get rusty because they're not playing. And it's not a good move. I mean, I like that, both these guys, they want to be here. They want to re-sign here. I do like that because, in years past, no one wanted to be here, So it's nice that, okay, guys want to sign here and stay here, but just like you said, long term, for the future, you got to commit to these guys. You got to commit to Pyotr Kochetkov and, make that bump up for him, make him the number 2 behind Andersen. And at the end of the day, I do think that they'll roll with Andersen and Kochetkov as their 1-2. I think if anyone is going to be the odd man out, it will probably be Antti Raanta. And that sucks because, nothing against Andersen and Raanta. They did great stuff for us. We wouldn't be in the position, that we're in if it weren't for them. So in that regard, it'll suck, to see, a guy that we enjoy watching, leave. But at the end of the day, it's the best move here. They need to go with Andersen and Raanta, or excuse me, Andersen and Kochetkov, and let Raanta go. Nothing against him, but that's the right move here. And I do think, re-signing Andersen and Raanta would be a mistake, because I don't see Raanta signing a 2-way and him being the third man. I don't see that happening at this stage. I mean, not saying it couldn't. Maybe they could do something. Ryan Dzingel last year, he signed, that 2-way, but he bit of a different situation there, of kind of having a lot dealing with injuries and bouncing around the league some. So it's not unheard of for an NHL guy to take that step back and sign that 2-way deal. But ultimately, I just don't see that happening. I really don't.
Yeah, it's I think if you look at what Raanta did with the Hurricanes last year, and especially what he did against the Islanders in the first part of the playoffs, I think he's still got a lot to offer an NHL team somewhere. Again, nothing against him. I think he's played well for the Hurricanes. I think it's Pyotr Kochetkov's time to be part of that true 2-man rotation, and I think Frederik Andersen's the ideal partner for him in that, because he's capable of handling, I think, a bit more of a workload and more games in a row than Raanta. So I think, probably for the best for both parties if Raanta moves on.
Yeah, I agree there. And we want to know y'all's thoughts on that as well. So make sure you're letting us know at LO_Hurricanes on Twitter. We're also going to do a mailbag episode at the start of next week, so you can send your thoughts in that way as well. But a lot of stuff has been coming out about the Jordan Staal contract extension negotiations, and we will dive into that right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, baseball season is underway, and if you're wanting to place a bet on any of those games, FanDuel is the place to go. Again, baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to fanduel.com/locked on to join today. So don't miss your chance to snag a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to fanduel.com/locked on to sign up. I'm wearing my crazy looking Detroit Tiger shirt. For once, Andrew is not wearing a Kansas City Royals shirt. So, if you're wanting to place a bet on either of those teams likely to lose their games, or, a team that you want to win, again, go to fanduel.com/locked on to sign up today. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Now, Jordan Staal contract extensions. We're finally at the end of his 10-year deal that he signed when he got here. And it's crazy to think about that it's finally up, first off, and that now we're diving into these negotiations. It seemed like a day that would never come. But something that's come out over these past few days is that they are pretty far apart in negotiations, which is honestly a bit surprising, but also not, because we've said before the Hurricanes do like to play hardball when it comes to contracts. It's their way or the highway. They may give you a little bit, here and there, but they're not really going to budge a whole lot. So it is interesting that they are so far apart. Obviously, we don't know what exactly Staal and his camp are asking for. We don't know what the Hurricanes are offering. We obviously don't know that. But yeah, this is a pretty interesting situation. Like Andrew said at the top of the episode, we are literally a week away from free agency opening up. So I think they get an extension done. I don't see them letting their captain go. But man, this isn't a story that I expected, really.
No, I thought that of all the things that they needed to take care of this offseason, re-signing Jordan Staal would probably be the simplest one. But as I said, it came out on TSN's Trade Center the other day that they're, somewhat far apart. They're basically at an impasse. That Jordan Staal's camp has given the Hurricanes some different options to choose from. They said on the panel, they're waiting for Tom Dundon to come off the number that he's willing to offer. Pretty popular for Canadian media to point figures at Tom Dundon, but maybe that's true.
Yeah.
He is the one who's in charge of how much money, signing off on these deals. Yeah, I gotta wonder. I don't know. Is Jordan Staal's camp, like, are they looking for 3 to 4 years? Too much term? Is that not what the Hurricanes want? Are they looking for more money than we would think? I would have thought it'd be like 2-3 million, especially coming off that, making 6 million a year for 10 years. Are they wanting too much of that? Are the Hurricanes just going low ball, like offering 1 year, 1 million? I don't think that's the case.
No.
But yeah, I think Jordan Staal still has a lot to offer in terms of his leadership as the captain, in terms of his two-way play. He's still the guy, and he offers some good secondary scoring too, but he's still the guy who's matching up against the opposition's top players every night. You look at the second-round series against New Jersey and the home games when Rod Brind'amour had last change, Jordan Staal basically made Jack Hughes a non-factor. So I would be looking to resign. We've talked about this. I'd be looking at 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3 million. Either that's not what the Hurricanes are offering, that's not what Jordan Staal wants. Something's got to give here. Now, here's one consideration of if he were to, maybe look more and more at walking. Are Eric and Mark going to play another NHL season after the run to the Stanley Cup final that they just had with the Panthers. Those are two guys you could see hanging it up, or, do the three of them want to find a place where they can all three play on the same team
Mm-hmm.
for 1 year before Eric and Mark hang it up? That's not going to be the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Mark Stahl is not good. Sorry. He's not going to play on the Hurricanes defense. I don't really think there's much of a place for Eric in the lineup either at this stage of his career. So, I mean, maybe that's something that they look at. But it sounds like to me it's just an issue of, at least from that TSN report, contract issues between the Hurricanes and Jordan Staal. So it's going to be interesting to see if this gets worked out. We have seen the Hurricanes play hardball with people and lose people you didn't expect to before. I mean, we saw Dougie Hamilton walk. We saw them change their goalies in the 2021 offseason when we never would have expected, Alex Nedeljkovic would be gone. We saw Nino Niederreiter walk. That was more about the Hurricanes not having enough cap space. But, this front office has not been shy about the idea of, we have a set amount that we're willing to pay people and everyone's replaceable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, there's been guys, that have left that you really didn't expect to, but man, Jordan Staal, been here, for over a decade. Like, the thought of, like him walking, like that's crazy stuff. But yeah, I do think, if he does, that's a big if, because there is still a week, before free agency opens, and just because, all right, he goes into free agency, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's gonna leave. They could, still be in, negotiations, like getting their stuff done. It's just taking longer. But yeah, I do think if Eric and Mark do continue to play for another season, I do think that if Jordan does leave, it is a possibility that the three of them try to play on the same team, because that's something I haven't been able to do. Yeah, Eric and Jordan played on the same team along with Jared for a game or two, but Jordan and Mark, never played on the same team. So, that could be something that, kind of plays into, that, because Jordan, he has his ring.
Yeah.
He's made his money. It could just be a thing of like, hey, this is something I want to do before, I hang it up.
And I feel like if you're a Hurricanes fan and you're the Hurricanes and that ends up being the case, you live with that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, just from what I'm hearing, like about them giving the Hurricanes options in terms of deals, like, I mean, it sounds like if an agreement can be reached, then Jordan wants to be here.
Yeah, I agree. If they're giving them options on deal rather than, essentially kind of playing the same way the Hurricanes do of, this is it, take it or leave it, they're giving them options like, hey, we're willing to do this or this or this or this. We don't know how many options we're given, of course. But, the fact that they're willing to do, all of that, that really does show that, hey, he wants to stay here. And if the Hurricanes were in the same boat that they were, 6-7 years ago, then yeah, I could totally see him just being like, all right, adios, see ya. If we can get some done, then fine. If not, I've no skin off my back. But now, like, this is a good team too. This is a team where if winning is something that he still wants to do, if he wants to get a second ring before he hangs it up, it's in a good place to do it too. It's not like, you're playing for a team that's, fighting for a top lottery spot anymore. Like, no, you're playing on a team that's fighting for a Stanley Cup. So in that regard, wanting to play on a winning team, you're already doing that too. So I think at the end of the day, he clearly, still wants to be here. With the options they're giving him, it's just kind of the Hurricanes, they're doing what they're doing. But it's going to be a very, very interesting thing to follow over this next week before free agency opens. And then, if something isn't done, by the time free agency opens, continuing to follow it throughout the offseason. This is not a story we expected to be talking about, that's for sure.
No, part of the fun of the off season, though. Sometimes things take weird twists and turns. As another one that we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, I know. And we're going to continue diving into contract extensions and potential trades. We will do that right after this quick break, folks. All right, folks, we're back, and it is time to talk about the Brett Pesce contract extension because, yeah, that was one we talked about. I believe it was last week. And, kind of wondering what was going to happen there. Were they going to get it done? Were they going to trade him? Blah, blah, blah. But now we're having more news on that. Also, courtesy of, I believe, Pierre LeBrun, of course. And Andrew, what was LeBrun saying about the Pesce contract extension?
Yeah, it was in the latest edition of the Athletics trade board this morning. Said that that the Hurricanes and Pesce, his agent, have been working on a deal in recent days, and it's looking more likely he gets extended. That there are still teams calling. Again, mentions Buffalo, and that he could still be traded if that middle ground isn't found. But it sounds like they're moving closer to finding that compromise, which I would think means that, like we talked about, not wanting to go too much term and whatnot, that maybe Pesce is willing to give a little bit of a compromise, a little bit of a discount, a little bit of that middle ground on term. Maybe the Hurricanes are willing to go more money for less term, something like that. But I think all in all, like we talked about, we said, that Pesce wasn't a guy that we would pay no matter what if his ask on terms and or money was exorbitant. But obviously he's a guy that you want back. I mean, if things are reasonable. I mean, he's a guy who's, we talked about his homegrown success story, played extremely well over the years for the Hurricanes on that second pairing, big part of their penalty kill, big part of really everything they do. Their identity is such a good puck possession, goal suppressing team. So certainly if the Hurricanes can keep him, around for years to come, that would be the ideal outcome. And, it sounds like they're moving in the right direction on that, with the obvious caveat that things can change very quickly this time of year.
Yeah, things can obviously, it looks good today. Tomorrow it could go to crap. And, we'll just see what happens. In talking with that one looking good. Maybe, that's why, the Jordan Staal stuff, hasn't really progressed. Maybe they're like, all right, we got Pesce, we got him, he's right there. Maybe they're focusing a lot on that right now. And then, okay, we get this done. Then we're going to, go here. Then we're going to go here. Then we're going to go here. Maybe that's something there. Maybe they're focusing a lot on Pesce right now when it comes to Jordan Staal. But yeah, if they can extend Brett Pesce and they can get that deal done, maybe over the weekend or whenever over this next week, that'd be great. That'd be absolutely great. Like you said, of course, still could be traded. They maybe don't find that middle ground, but yeah, if they can keep him, oh yeah, that's going to be a great move because like we've said, he's such a big part of this team's identity, such a good homegrown success story for the Hurricanes. And yeah, love to be able to keep him if we can. Same with Jordan Staal. Love to be able to keep him if at all possible, if they can get those two extensions worked out. Same, of course, with a guy like, talked earlier, Frederik Andersen. Love to keep him if at all possible, which I do think the Hurricanes will. Now, finally, you know, we have been expecting, the Hurricanes to make a splash in terms of a trade this offseason, or splash or two, really, for one. And we've talked a lot about Calgary potentially being one that they could make a deal with. We had thought, Elias Lindholm, Noah Hannafin. We had talked about those guys, but a guy that I believe we mentioned briefly, but didn't really spend a whole lot of time on was Tyler Toffoli. Now, Are the Canes potentially targeting him for a trade? That was another one I believe you said before we started recording. Also, Pierre LeBrun.
Yeah, it was in the trade center. It wasn't so much saying that the Hurricanes were like going hard after him. It's
Hmm.
just, they're looking to move him. He's got, because he's not going to sign an extension there. Got 1 year, 4.25 million left on his contract. So the Hurricanes could easily fit him in for next year if they're looking to add some more goal scoring on the wing. Coming off he's been a pretty consistent 20, 25, 30 goal guy. You look at he's 31, the early to mid 2010s. He was a really good player for the Kings. Then he spent some time with Montreal. Then the last couple of years with Calgary. He's coming off the best season of his career with 34 goals, 39 assists, 73 points. Been a really good proven finisher over the years. I think would be a really good fit in the Hurricanes top six. Could be exactly what they need to add, that extra goal scoring to get them over the hump. LeBrun said he would be a sell high option at this stage and may be a fit in Carolina if the Hurricanes were prepared to offer anything tangible in return. I know in our last episode we talked with Matt about the number 30 pick not holding a ton of value, but maybe for a guy like Toffoli with a year left on his contract, like that could be the start of a deal, that number 30 pick, if the Flames are looking at moving into a bit of a rebuild, which, if they're going to do that, maybe they should have traded Matthew Tkachuk to the Hurricanes for futures instead of getting Huberdeau and Weegar. But that's, I digress. But yeah, Tyler Toffoli, I think, put him and his finishing ability on, say, Sebastian Aho's wing.
Hmm.
I think that could be a really nice fit for the Hurricanes, both in the regular season and in the playoffs when they need that proven goal scoring. Because if you look at Tyler Toffoli, let's see, in his playoff career, so the Kings run in 2013-14 to this winning the Stanley Cup. He was pretty good. Last year for Calgary, scored a couple goals, scored a few big goals for Montreal in that weird 2021 bubble season when they went to the Stanley Cup final. So I think he's definitely a guy I'm looking at as maybe one of those pieces that could help the Hurricanes get over the hump.
Yeah, it definitely could be, a deal that we watch out for over this coming week before, the draft, because teams make a lot of moves in. We got free agency fixing to open up. Obviously, he has that year left on his deal, of course, but, a lot of moves, tend to get made right around there as well. You're like, okay, this guy isn't going to extend. We're just going to move him. And a guy we talked about, potentially being in a trade package, with the Flames looking to sell high, rebuild, all that stuff. Teuvo Teravainen, does he be in that trade package with Calgary potentially? Obviously, not saying it's going to happen, but that could be a potential thing because at the end of the day, if you want to get good, you got to give up good. So that could be one that, is potentially, in that trade package as well. I do think, again, that number 30 pick could definitely get moved in this deal or, any other that the Hurricanes could potentially make. But yeah, this is a deal. I'd like to see it. This could be that could be really fun. Like you said, Sebastian Aho, Tyler Toffoli, you figure, okay, you probably got Seth Jarvis up there as well. That would be a really fun line to watch.
Yeah, so you're talking about moving Teravainen. Obviously, if Calgary's in a rebuild, he's a little bit of an older guy
Yeah.
with a year left. But the thing about him is you bring him in, you put him, maybe on a line with Huberdeau, hope he has a bounce back year, and then you can flip him at the deadline for more assets. But that, if you were potentially looking at a Hurricanes top six of like Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, and Tyler Toffoli, and then maybe that Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Necas line behind them, that could do some damage. I could see that could work out.
That'd be really, really fun to watch. And of course, we're not saying this trade is going to happen. We're not saying Teuvo Teravainen is going to get traded because, we're not in the offices there on PNC Arena or at PNC Arena, excuse me. We're not in those offices. We're not seeing those emails. We're not on those phone calls or anything like that. So, you know, we don't know for sure if this is going to happen, if it's not going to happen, but this could be fun, and I'd like to see it. And obviously we'll continue to follow this as the time goes on. If something falls through, if it progresses, whether it be Frederik Andersen re-signing, Antti Raanta re-signing, Jordan Staal re-signing, Brett Pesce re-signing, or the Hurricanes trading for Tyler Toffoli or someone else who will obviously be covering here on Locked On Hurricanes. So make sure you are following the show along on Twitter at LO_Hurricanes, and myself on Twitter at JaredEllis_96, and Andrew on Twitter at ASchnit53. And you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, let's go Canes.